near victorians of faith, with our hearts sprinkling clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to step up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day draw near. May the Lord bless this one.
Double mic, yeah. Exciting times. Forgot about the delightful noise of people flushing the toilets that we get every now and again. But that said, it is nice to be back, isn't it? It's nice to be back face to face, meeting together, worshipping together. It's been, I think, almost a year since I've preached to people rather than to my phone. And that was in the days when we had really low limits, so like 3 or 4 people scattered around, or maybe just word had got out that it was me. But I think Corona's been tough in many different ways. You know, I won't go into the detail. I'm sure you've all felt it, you've read the articles. One thing though, I think it's really maybe changed our perspective in many ways. Things that we, 2 years ago, going back home, travelling overseas, eating out, meeting up with your friends, giving your friends a hug. We didn't think those were privileges, did we? We just thought that's our right. That's what we do in life. Now we look at those things, we think, wow, what a privilege. What a privilege we've had in Sweden, really, compared to most countries. Australia are locked down. $5,000 if you leave your house without permission. What a privilege we have that we can walk freely. Could get into another side thing, whether that's a privilege or right anyway, but let's not go there. But it's really made us realise, hasn't it, what a privilege we have with all these things that maybe we thought were rights. And of course, when you have a privilege, generally you exercise that. To say, me and Fiona have been scrutinising the UK's green, red, amber lists, the Sweden advisories, the PCR guidelines, the quarantine regulations for months. And finally, I think, God willing, we have the privilege that in 3 weeks we can go back to the UK. We won't have to quarantine with my mother-in-law, which is a big as much as us. We can go back. And of course, we're really keen. Look at and as a result. And don't worry, as 7 point moment, there'll be But we don't know who. But he also goes on to say that we have a great priest. Again, there's some very significant verses in the chapters preceding this. The writer says, "Now there have been many of these priests, since death prevents them from continuing in office. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. Such a high priest truly meets our need, one who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike other high priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his sins and then for the sins of the people. He sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself." You see, before Jesus, you had earthly priests, but they had their own sins, they had their own things in their life that they needed dealing with before they could intercede for others, before they could step between them, between you and God. But when Jesus died, Jesus was without fault. Jesus did nothing wrong. Jesus was pure, he was holy, he was blameless. So when Jesus died, his sacrifice lasted forever. He's the great high priest. It says he sat down at the right hand of God. And he's there today interceding for us. Talking to God on our behalf. This perfect, eternal high priest. He's our priest. And this is why we can bring things to him in prayer. Not just because it makes us feel good. Well, it does make us feel good. But that's not the thing. Our prayers go to God through Christ Jesus. Our twisted, stumbling words arrive as these perfect, beautiful things at God's ear, all because of Jesus. It's the second amazing privilege that we have. The writer of Hebrews is great, and so I really want to meet the guy and say thank you, because as a preacher, he just sets it up, because he's always saying, therefore, do this. So it's a really clear application, because we have these two amazing privileges. Therefore, he says, firstly, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance. So our first practical application is this: let's draw near to God. We have this privilege to go in to this holy place. Let's use it. I often joke with a Swedish friend of mine, when anything goes wrong in Sweden, if I'm stuck on the train, if there's roadwork, I say, please, could you just have a word with the king? This is terrible. And of course she can't talk to the king. But if she could just go to the king of Sweden and he could actually do something about it, now of course you would use that privilege. How greater is it that we can go to God, that we can draw near to God? We can have a full assurance through our faith in him that he listens to us, he hears our prayers, and he cares for us. So I'd really encourage you as it has been tough, hasn't it? Not seeing one another, not worshipping together. But we now have that liberty again. Let's draw near to God together. Let's worship him. Let's read the Bible. Let's pray to him. Let's draw near to God. So my phone seems to go into shut down about every 10 seconds. So I'm not just keeping an eye on the cricket score. Anyway, the second thing, the writer of Hebrews urges us to hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. Hold unswervingly to the promise we have through Jesus Christ. I'm rather reminded, I hope Fiona doesn't mind me mentioning this, we recently got a car, and of course the UK is unusually enlightened in that they drive on the left side of the road. Just like South Africa, I think South Africa is similarly enlightened. Most of the rest of the world is weirdly drives on the right. So it's been a little bit of I think Fiona had never driven on the right before. We did find ourselves occasionally veering alarmingly towards the curb, generally. So away from the traffic, but towards the curb. And so I said, don't worry about the curb, just stick close to that, that far from the middle. So it's on your side, just stick there. Hold unswervingly. I didn't say that, but I should have said hold unswervingly. Because as soon as you start drifting, so you're heading towards the curb. And I think this is the thing. think if we even just let a little bit sort of dilute the gospel, then we're doing exactly what these early Jewish Christians were doing. I think they believed that Christ had died for them, but they also thought we probably should still do our annual sacrifice. Now, I don't see any of you killing goats, thankfully, but do we sometimes let a little bit of works slip into our gospel? Because we all know there are certain things we must strive to do as Christians. But sometimes we actually twist it a bit in our heads, don't we? We start trying to bargain with God a little bit. I often think when I know I'm far from God, I have to stop myself thinking, okay, I need to get near to God and then start praying to him. It's like, no, that's not how it works. That's not holding unswervingly to the faith in God. That's me saying, I'm not where I should be, God. Let me just get myself back and then we'll carry on. The prodigal son didn't do that, did he? He returned to his father. So let's hold unswervingly. Let's not add works. Let's not put ourselves in Jesus' place. Salvation comes through grace. Salvation comes through Christ. There is nothing in us, as wonderful people as you are, there is nothing in you that saves yourself. It is only through Christ. Let's hold unswervingly to that. Third, fourth and fifth, they're all very much linked together and very kind of corporal, is that a word? Maybe. As in, it's something we do together. Those first two are sort of corporate, that's it, not corporal, that's in the army. So these next three are very much things we do together. Third thing he says, consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. I like the little nuance there. It doesn't say, let us do good deeds. It doesn't say, let us spur one another on towards good deeds. Just let us consider. There's a very active sense in it. We should actually be thinking, because we have this privilege that we share with one another, let's really think, how can we encourage each other in our Christian life? How can we encourage each other in the difficult times? How can we encourage one another to draw near to God, to hold unswervingly? There are many ways we can do it. We live in an age where it's so easy to contact people. There are so many ways. Just a little message. How are you doing? Praying for you. How did that conversation go with your friend at work? Really would urge you to consider how you can spur one another on. And if I may just slightly single another person out, and hopefully won't embarrass them too much, but do consider our pastor. Being a pastor's tough at the best of times, let alone when you can't see your congregation. Oh, maybe that's a plus point, I don't know, but I think it's hard. I know a couple of pastors, and they found it really hard because you can't know how people are doing. It's harder to reach out. So do bear Phil in your prayers. Bear the family in your prayers. Seek to reach out and encourage them. They've uprooted from the UK to plant this church. They've given up a lot. So encourage them. Think how to spur them on. When I think of spurring on, I was really reminded of the Olympics. I don't know about you, I found the Olympics a little bit weird. Partly because I have no idea how to watch sport in Sweden without paying money. But also there were no crowds. So you had this the most epic, I think the 400 metre hurdles was one of the most epic, records were broken, smashed, and you can hear a couple of coaches going, yay! There's not this crowd roaring them on. That's what I think of spurring people on, this tremendous swell, this surge. Everyone cheering for the same thing. Let's really have that in mind when we try and encourage one another. Fourth thing, let us not give up meeting together. It says, as some are in the habit of doing, and this is something we can slip into, isn't it? We can reach a point where we think it's just between me and God. I'm really regular with my reading, I'm praying, telling my friends about Christ. We don't really need to meet. Acts is full of things that would refute that. Paul, who was one of the most amazing men who ever lived, he spent a lot of time with his friends, with the churches. all the biblical patterns for the Christian life have a strong implication that it's something you do together. Christian life is not something you do on your own. It's not meditating on a hilltop far away from everyone else. We are to meet together. You read Acts and they just seem to meet all the time. They just lived as family. They spent a lot of time together. So I don't think this is necessarily just saying, come to every Sunday service and midweek meeting. Meet together. Share together. Share your troubles together. It can be difficult. There's busy times, there can be other priorities, there are other things that we love to do. But it doesn't say in the Bible, let us not give up doing that sport, or watching that program, or having that extra hour in bed, as nice as that may be. But it does say, don't give up meeting together. So I encourage you to do that, to meet as much as you can with your fellow believers. And then just finally, very closely linked, it says, let us encourage one another all the more as you see the day approaching. We don't know when Christ is going to return. We know he is going to return. We know it's going to be a glorious thing. We know that we need to prepare our hearts and prepare the hearts of others. We need to tell others of him. We need to tell people the good news that Christ came and died that they might be saved. So let's encourage one another. As we come back, it feels exciting, this is the second week of almost normality in terms of church. As we sort of gather momentum, really urge you to just remember what an amazing privilege it is. Firstly, that we can meet at all.